Hi guys, webinar 28, adjusting to stakes. Just simply discussing if you play differently depending on what type of buy-in you're in. This relates to all games you play, 9s, 18s, 45s, 180s, MTTs, whatever. Most of these hands, actually all three of these hands, are just 180 based questions, but the same principles still apply. Someone's mic is on. Okay, so in this first hand right here, this is an old one for what is the date on this? March 11, 2011. Someone's mic is on still. Okay, this is heads up. Hero has 200k. Sorry, no universal replayer for this hand because I couldn't convert it. Hero has 200k. Big blind has 67k before posting the blind of 7,000, I believe. 7,000 is the blind. Okay. If you want, here's the link to this. So if you want to look at it on your own, there's that. You can click that. Yes, you can see the results. Hero is small blind with 6-4 offsuit. Big blind has about 8.5 or 9 big blinds ish after posting. What's your range here for shoving and why? And hint, you don't know the buy-in yet. Oh, well, you do if you notice some things on the screen that give it away. But let's pretend, since it depends on read on villain, I agree, definitely. If you have no reads, which I guess by the time you are heads up, you would have some reads. What I'm trying to get at here is I wonder, without information, do you vary your range or ranges like limping and min raising and 3xing and all that kind of stuff? Do you vary depending on the buy-in? Now this is really good. Let's write this down really quick. Let's do this. So Matt says that this is the first hand of heads up he's jamming. Now Big Nuke says opponent dependent and not buy-in dependent. Ah. So Matt says, yeah, he's doing it because it's less than 10 big blinds. Jamie adds, you can get good regs and a low buy-in and also high buy-in. Right, right. And you would have reads from final table plays. Yeah, I would hope by now we have some type of information. And TeamViewer decided to just cut out. What? Why does TeamViewer do this? Here, guys. So I like your answers. These are, in a way, kind of trick questions. Sometimes they apply. Sometimes your range might change based on the buy-in. But mostly, your range should mostly depend on opponent. I can't spell opponent. Opponent and reads on him or her. Okay? So when you're in this hand, if you guys were in Puyan's spot, what would you guys do with 6-4 here? That's fine. Welcome. What would you do here with 6-4? And would it change if you had zero information? Do you find that it changes based on buy-in at all, if any? I guess I'm raise folding at higher buy-ins and limp folding, limp stabbing at lower buy-ins. And why would that be? What's your reasoning behind that?
Excuse me. So why do you change?
The blinds are, I believe, 3,500, 7,000. So villain has less than 10 big blinds here. I think someone's mic is on. Someone who's sniffing.
Oh, that's me. 1 sec.
That's fine. Thanks, man.
Just gotta turn off the sound here.
Yeah.
I will talk to you later.
Because lower buy-ins people call off easier, and higher buy-ins people are tighter heads up. This is good. What do you feel like? Well, I guess you already answered it, really. It's because there's more money on the line, right? So this is a good transition into this concept I was discussing with, if I'm pronouncing it right, Supavegi. I don't know how to say it correctly. We were discussing this earlier today. It's the idea of relative value. So there's EV, there's maximum EV, there's all that kind of stuff. So this is relative value. And it's the idea of what does this money mean to not only you, but to your opponents as well. So maybe a reason why people are tighter at higher buy-ins is because obviously the money is more important to them. But that's not always the case, because you could be playing a $2 180 man against a guy who has $5 of lifetime profit over however many thousands of games. Sweet. Nice. So even though it is like $2 the lowest buy-in that we play, maybe to the opponent you're playing against, it's huge because of the money relative to him. Right, and we don't have reads. Now, one thing that is kind of cool, actually, that you can do is whenever you get really deep in an important game, or if you get heads up, you could always just shark scope to the guy, not to necessarily see like how good or bad he is, but just to get an idea if this is a normal thing for him. Has he been heads up a bunch of times? Like if someone has $10,000 profit, being heads up in a $2 180 probably doesn't phase them very much. But if someone only has $1 of profit, they're probably really, really nervous. And also average buy-in helps too. Andrew says, like, what if you have a guy in a 35 with an average buy-in of 10? Exactly. Because now it's not normal. Like, what if he just, he throws in a 35, he's never been there before, it's going to phase him. But then at the same time, if you were in a 35 and you're playing against a guy who's up $500,000 from big stake MTTs, that guy's not going to really care as much if he blows the game or something, because to him, relatively speaking, that game is essentially meaningless. Well, yeah, I mean, I barely ever played the 35 180s. Andrew's probably played more of those than me. But, I mean, when you think about it, it applies proportionally to all stakes, It's just the idea of the relative value to your opponent can influence the degree of tightness or looseness that you might see in an opponent. So Jamie, who plays tons of MTTs, and apparently it's final tabling, says this is like so true of the big Sunday games. You get a lot of scared money from low stake guys. Exactly. And you know what? Even if I could play now, I'd be scared money too. Even if I could play like just normal 180s again, I would probably be really kind of worried at first because I haven't played in a year. So I'd be like, oh my God, don't blow it. Because relative to me, it's new. That's more money than I've won in poker in the last 50, how many weeks has it been? 53 weeks now? I think I'd freak out a $2 180 heads up at this point. And especially like in those big Sunday games, I mean, not very many of the people who play those things are used to being surrounded by big payouts, because it's it's pretty rare to do that good unless you're Jamie. Then it's just normal. Andrew has, but at the same time, while multi-tabling, it's hard to catch these things. Yeah, I mean, we're never really going to have like a perfect read on an opponent, but if you are deep in a meaningful game, we know that the other person will be recognizing that they are deep too, you know, and so it's just a matter of, is this normal to somebody? Because usually when things are normal, people aren't affected by them as much. But if they're abnormal, especially when there's a lot of pressure, people might change. Exactly. This is exactly right. Hey, and that's great, especially at an MTT final table. That's a huge benefit, because you want to see like who's used to this, who is like wants the money so bad. Like if there's a guy who's up 500 lifetime and all of a sudden you're at an MTT final table with 5K for first place, that guy can 10 times his lifetime profit in one game. Andrew says, could we assume if we have next to no hands on them that it applies to the same idea? Yes, because the hands don't determine whether or what someone's personality is going to be like, or what their the psychological impact of what type of game you're in. That won't be determined by any hand stats we have on someone. It's kind of a predetermined thing inside the opponent themselves. Is someone nervous? Hands don't tell us necessarily if someone's nervous, but their overall results can imply nervousness. It may not be 100% accurate. I mean, I'm sure there's guys out there who have never made money and lots of money doesn't make them nervous. But I'd say the majority of the time it would be true. Yeah, and that's really, really good. It's a good way to use Sharkscope searches. I mean, if you have that 150 searches a day thing. And then more of these Russian stereotypes. I hear these all the time. Right, and then, yes. So then the stats, good point, Andrew. The stats will just complement a read that you may have. So you are, if you think someone may be nervous or timid just based on their overall results, the hands will just complement that read even further. Yeah, I mean, HUD is very helpful. And just watching what people do. I think sometimes even more important than HUD is just if you have one good hand that shows one good personality insight to someone's kind of character, that can sometimes be more powerful than like 500 hands of stats. If you just see one thing that's very telling about an individual's personality, that's something that could help a lot. Cool. So I guess you guys got the main point of this, which is the main point of everything here, is it's never really the buy-in itself. It's the opponent within that buy-in and how things are relative to them. Another thing too I wanted to add is how you structure your sets can actually make some type of an impact on this, and your bankroll and your personal relative situation in your life. Example, like in Puyan's hand here, if I was playing a session where I loaded $22 games and a couple of $15 games on the side, if this was a $15 game, I would be much more cautious and make sure that I really win that game. So I wouldn't, in a $15 game, if I had a bunch of twos and just a couple 15s, I would never shove this here because I don't want to just make the game go fast. I want to take my time and make sure that I can win that game. Because if I win one $15 game in the midst of playing the majority of twos, that's huge profit. And it would take like 7 $2 games of wins to equate to one $15 win. So Sanders says, I think at the beginning stages the difference is not so big, but once you get deeper, the higher buying gets tougher than the low ones. So pull them out. Well, yeah, I mean, always pulling them out for sure. But just because it's a higher buy-in does not always mean it's tougher. I would say that overall, yes, overall, they're slightly tougher. but it's more so the opponents in it. And like Andrew said, HUD is very important. It's the every game you're in is a story, and it's the characters within the story that make up that event. It's never the buy-in itself. The buy-in overall, you could say, yes, 15s, we can all agree, are probably slightly harder than 2s. Oh, yeah. But in each individual $15 game, each individual story, the characters will be different. So it's the characters that make up the toughness or the easiness of the game, not the buy-in itself. There's a lot of things like people will ask a lot, like, do you think I'm ready to move up to the next buy-in, or do you think the next buy-in is tougher, or how should I change my ranges based on a higher buy-in? But it's never really, you can't make this generalized overall change. It's about who are the people within this story. Okay, get to know those characters and interact with them now. Yeah, exactly. Characters are different. Some regs are tighter than others, by example. And there's tons of ways that people differ from each other. And so that's why, like, when I take reads on people, and I know we've discussed this before, I don't look for physical reads, like he raised whatever, right? I'm looking for things that show personality. Personality reads, which I just call PRs. So if I see someone make a weird raise, instead of remembering that physical thing he does, I'm trying to ask myself, what does that imply about his personality? Because now if I have a personality read on that character in this story, I can interact with him. It's like the same way with, like, when you meet people, right? Or like you have different friends. I bet you guys, you know a guy who's funny, right? You may know a guy who's shy, right? You know a girl who's cute. You know a guy who's cool, whatever. And it's all those personality traits you can like kind of imply certain okay, yeah, awesome. you can kind of estimate behavior. Like, I know this guy who's really funny, right? I bet you when I see him tomorrow, he's probably going to make me laugh. And you could assume that because that's his personality, right? But if we just go, oh, I know this guy and he made a joke, that just is one thing. That's the physical read on him. Yes, that guy made a joke. That tells us nothing about him except he made a joke. But then if we read into that, we say, oh, he made a joke, it's probably because he's funny, and now we know his overall personality thing, right? And so that's the whole thing. Like, if I see a physical thing, I'm not just remembering this. I'm trying to convert it into a personality thing, because then if I have that personality read, I have a better idea of who this character is within this story. Yeah. Okay. So what to do doesn't really matter about buying. It's more of the character himself. And then the other thing, how is this money relative to you and or the other player? So let's go to this one now. Folds around to you in the small blind. Same kind of thing as before. Does the buy-in affect your range here? And if so, do you have different ranges? Good. Good. Let's say that you have zero information. He just shows up there. You're just thrown into this situation. Just answer yes or no. Do you ever feel like your range could change at all based on the buy-in? Okay, so we get a no. Anybody else? Yes or no? So the question is, if you have zero information, do you ever feel that your range could vary by buy-in as just as a default approach, or does it always stay the same? So it stays the same. Okay. Yeah, right. Good. And it should be. It should be HUD dependent. That's good. Read dependent. So we're working under the assumption that you have absolutely nothing. Your HUD exploded. Hold manager shut down. Okay, static range. Okay. Okay. What if this was what if this was $1,000 buy-in? Then does that make you change at all? Just for you, does it change you? Just if I say, hey, oh, all of a sudden you're in $1,000 game. Yeah, good. It depends on the stage of the game. So we'll just pretend that this is the same exact 180, except now it's $1,000 one. For some reason, I don't know why. This is in a 180. This would be, what are we here? Like 80 people left, something like that. Yeah, Table Ninja screwed you up with registering, and it put you in a $1,000 game. You guys ever wonder why that when you, and I don't know if you remember this, when you first download Poker Stars, the very first game that they have highlighted is the most expensive game they run, which is that 5,200 or whatever it is heads up thing. It's the very first game they have highlighted. And when you, like, for example, if you re-download Poker Stars when you already have a hotkey thing, you are literally like one hotkey click away from registering for that game if you have enough money. That was a scary almost accident that happened. That's why sometimes I get scared of Table Ninja. Okay. Okay, so that's interesting. So he's saying he still pushes, but he doesn't feel as comfortable. Yeah. See, this is interesting. They will feel pressure because it's a 1K. Now, of course, it depends on relative value. If the big blind is, I don't know, Jamie Gold, like, he doesn't care that it's a $1,000 game. Oh boy, that sounds scary. Like, Jamie Gold wouldn't care if this was final table and there was like $100,000 for first place. It's Jamie Gold. He's loaded. He doesn't, and he's not very good. But he wouldn't care. But you throw a normal person like us in that seat in a $1,000 game, and at least for me, I'd be very intimidated. It's 1K, like, that's huge. I've never even dabbled anywhere close to that. I don't think I've ever played a triple-digit game, maybe 5 times ever. Yeah, like Elky. Elky would not care. So that's why it's really important to always just think about how is it relative to you and how is it relative to him. If you can think about this stuff, at least you always know how it's relative to you. Especially if you structure your sets in a way, which is very common for people to mix games where you have maybe a few of a higher buy-in or something. And it's important to take extra care in those games because those are worth more than the other ones. So they're not all the same, you know. What you do in a 2 and what you do in a 15, it makes a big difference because that 15 could be worth more. Exploit what, Andrew? When you say, but you could exploit that, what is that? Yeah. And you're probably
Jamie's probably a lot more comfortable in spots like this than I am, or a lot of us are, because he's used to more of these high money, high pressure situations. It's more common for him.
yeah, I can see that.
And one thing about average buy-in is like it's like half accurate, because there still are people who have like an average buy-in of 10, but have, I mean, you could look actually in one cool thing in Sharkscope is you could see like the biggest wins someone's had and biggest losses actually for that matter. And you can see like there may be a guy who has an average buy-in of 5 or 10, but it's possible that he's won a $30,000 thing before. I did a coaching session once with a guy who was completely break even, and then he won that quarter Sunday, whatever that $10 Sunday Million type game is on Sundays, if that still exists. That's like 33,000 people and like the same amount of money for first place. Like he won that, and I was just like, oh my god. And for the record, I didn't coach him before I coached him after, so no way contributed to that at all.
But like that's huge. So even though that guy's average buy-in is like 4, I believe, on his Sharkscope, he's had the experience of winning something that was $33,000. So then put him in a $15 180 man, and even though his average buy-in is 4, maybe it doesn't intimidate him as much because he's already won something for $33,000. So like one cool thing is if you get to a final table in something, just look at the biggest wins someone's had and see if they've ever been around that kind of money before. And sometimes you'll find someone who's like their biggest win of all time is like $200, and all of a sudden you're playing in a $15 180 final table where he can win $700 or $800. Yeah, I actually remember that screen name. Yeah, what was that, the one where it was like 1.2 million or something crazy like that? Oh, that's true. Yeah, and you could also see like in his graph too, if he has a huge spike. Right. But sometimes when people get in situations where they've never even come close to that type of money before, or they've never won that money, I guess you wouldn't know if they came close or not unless you dug deeper in their results. But you could see someone who perhaps has never won that kind of money before, and it's probably intimidating. Like if I was put in a situation right now where I could win like $10,000, I'd probably be really, really nervous. Like, because I've never had the chance to win something like that before. I've never come that close, you know? Well, heck, nowadays I'd be nervous over like $500. So, I mean, Jamie, didn't you did something like for 14K or something like that, right? Oh man, oh like 16. Oh, sorry, pardon me. Like, would you? I mean, since you have a lot of experience going after stuff like that, well, you did good though. You are a fish, but you did. I mean, would you, even coming from you, you have a lot of experience in these types of things, like, would you feel nervous if you were going after, like, you had a chance to break your record, essentially? You know, you get 25K. That's a lot of money. Oh my God, that'd be amazing. It's this idea of like, if you can break your own personal best, it can be intimidating because it's like, God, you've never done this before. You know, and so if you find a guy in your 180 games, maybe their biggest win of all time was just some $3 18 man, and now they're in a $3 rebuy final table. Take advantage of them. Oh man. Oh man. Oh, that's crazy. Okay. So, could you shove here? Could you limp? Could you min raise? You could do everything. It's whatever you feel based on all the things that we discussed. I don't really care what you do. Just don't fold, I guess. Don't do that. Yeah, that's cool. That's a kind of a cool personality trait. Okay, and then we'll go to the last hand. 91. Okay, this one right here. So this is just a very common, like, your chip leader, it's the bubble final table. Maybe the buy-in makes a difference because there's more money on the line, right? Um, can you raise here and just call the small blind and call everybody else? Or sorry, call the small blind and fold everybody else. Um, I think if anything, this is where probably the buy-in, because of the pressure of the money difference, this is probably where the buy-in actually makes the biggest difference of all. And this is something like you guys probably thought about for a long time. Just bigger buy-in, more pressure. But that's not always true because it's relative, right? Relative pressure. Um, if this is Jamie, or heck, if this guy's Jamie, like, he's not feeling the pressure that the average opponent is feeling in this spot because he's used to it. He's been surrounded by this before. Um, but I would say overall, in a vague statement, you should raise more at higher buy-ins. But it depends on the characters in the story. So HUD's good for that, like Andrew was saying, etc. Open any Tau and outplay and post flop. Easy game. And then Jamie will 3-bet, haha, because he's good at that kind of stuff. One thing worth mentioning, I guess, is one thing that you can gain from Shark Scope at this point is when you are against someone who is a typical regular, and like, let's just say, oh, you know he's a regular, and that's all you know. That happens all the time. One thing is to find out if they have an MTT background or not. So Jamie has, he says, deep in MTT or even 180 mans, you can open super wide on people who are short stacks for sure, as they never get it in light. Yeah, pretty much. This is, I think, really helpful. Like, if you are ever in a key situation and you just want to find out about the table or whatever, find out if someone has an MTT background. Like Jamie, for instance. Like, if Jamie was the chip leader here, if he was the button, Jamie is probably much more likely to 3-bet than the average regular because Jamie is used to that kind of stuff. He's really good at that kind of stuff. Am I right? Am I wrong? Nervous, awaiting a response. Probably even Andrew. I'm afraid of Andrew. Yeah, that's true. There are shorties behind right, so you probably would have to call and stuff like that. Good point. Yeah, that's a good point too. Stack sizes may mean that the opener is a little tighter. Oh, really? What if the person who was raising is raising really wide? You would get tighter because the other people behind you you'd have to call? Yeah, really good object. Because if it folded around you on the button, couldn't you just shove very wide anyway? So technically, couldn't, if the original opener was really wide, couldn't you 3-bet with your original shoving range from the button? And it would be like the same thing as if you shove?
Klausies, kaut ko Guns tēvs teica, ka kaut kādas cenas tur mainīšoties,
Okay.
vai viņš mānās?
Someone's speaking in a language I don't understand.
Kilgramīgi varētu būt viņš.
Wait, who is it? There we go. Your risk. Oh. Your risk is bigger because of the open razor. Ah, okay. Interesting. Do you guys tend to raise more here just based on like buy-in, or more so based on people, or is it a combination of both? What is Bob? Or do you mean BVB? Blind on blind? Is that what you mean? Blind on blind? Huh? Has it been that long since I played? What is Bob? Bob was okay. Blind on blind. Okay. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So like there are reads here. Oops. But fold is totally fine. Just this idea of relative value of opponents, not necessarily the buy-in itself. Although overall, the higher the buy-in, the more pressure. Now, race for value. You have the best hand. Easy game. Oh, I remember that guy. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Especially in the types of games that guy's playing. Because that guy is like, there's good people, there's really good people, there's really good people, and then there's that guy. Like, he's incredible. And so in the types of games that guy's playing, it's like pressure is just huge. So conclusion, pressure is player dependent. Guy that had his last $2.05 on his count is huge scared in 250, 180. And the guy that has 50K in his account, he won't care if he loses. Yeah, pretty much. It's funny you say that. When I started playing with money for the first time was like 5 years ago. And I deposited $25 and I lost down to my final $2.20. And then built it up to $180 and then blew it all. But I was pretty nervous in that last $2.20 game. It was scary. And then I complained and moaned. I said I would never play again. And then my friend gave me $50. And then it was good. Also, you could tell the sample size, the number of games someone has played too. And yeah, and just like when I started, I'm not playing. Do you guys have any questions about anything at all? Seems good. Thank you, sir. Wait. Yeah, no ranges. That's the whole point, I guess. Because I get these questions a lot. What's your range, It's like, well, how do you know? I'm a fish too, don't worry. Oh, did I miss a question? I'm sorry. I just asked. Oh, wait, what did you say? I just asked a fish, how did it feel to ship a 180 man in first two? You mean, why do we call names to people? I like that. That's a really good expression. I've never heard that before. Exactly. Why are you being so mean? Real fish in real life die in like a week. At least if you get them as a pet when you're a kid and then you cry because your mom said that the fish had to take a swim down the toilet. But maybe that's just bad childhood memories. I don't know. Alright, I'm going to close this out. I did that. There we go. See ya.